Okay, here we are on the homestead, and we're going to talk about making Christmas wreaths with whatever you happen to have available. I like a mixed wreath. That's my favorite. I don't have fir anymore now that we've moved to the coast. I've got pine, and that's okay. It makes a little bit crazier wreath than fir, but I've got pine, I've got evergreen huckleberry, I've got cedar, I've got holly. You can put anything you want in there, literally. You could do, you can even do silk flowers and silk foliage. I did that for a lady that was allergic for years. I used to make wreaths professionally at a company that made thousands of wreaths a year. And those wreaths were made on a machine, which I do have one of those, but most people are not going to have one of those. You're going to have just a simple ring that you're going to hand wrap. Okay, but I'm using the same principles as I was taught there to make a better, rounder, nicer balanced wreath. Okay, so first I've got, this is a 10-inch ring. On a 10-inch ring, you're going to have 10 bundles of greens. On a 12-inch ring, you would have 12 bundles of greens.
And how large is that when it's completed around?
Well, it's anywhere between 18, 20, depending on how big you like the edges to be. Okay, but I've cut myself out a guide that is not round, as we can see from an old shipping box. But it was supposed to be round, I just messed it up. But just as a guide, okay, to try to keep your ring centered while you're doing this. And so you can kind of gauge whether your wreath is going to be round, so you don't end up with one side that's long and one side that's short, whatever.
And is there a gauge of wire you should be using?
Well, this is 22 gauge, okay, but I'm finding that a little thin because I just broke a piece a minute ago. So you really want to maybe go up the next size and go a little bigger than that. And normally you're going to have this on a paddle, but I got my paddle attached to my other wreath that I'm going to bring over here in a minute. There are two important things to remember about wreath making. The first clip and the last clip will make you or break you. If you don't do those two clips right, those two sections of greens right, your wreath is not going to look right. Okay, now let's talk about color. You can do everything from putting color on every bundle all the way up to alternating. So the way I was taught at the commercial wreath company was that on a 10-inch ring, when you have 10 bundles of greens, you're going to have it alternated, okay? So you always start with green, although I did that wrong on my other one. Always start with green, and that's so you don't have your decorative pieces getting lost when you marry the first and last clip. Okay, so you go green, color, green, green, color, green, green, color, green, green. So
and you would count color as something like your
something
holly.
pretty, something bright. Some people don't put anything, and that's okay. If your bow is the only color you want, there's nothing wrong with that. So you're going to have 3 greens in a row, though, and that's where your bow will go. Because you don't need to waste colorful, decorative pieces, especially if you're doing something like silk flowers, because they're expensive. You don't necessarily want to waste that underneath your bow. Okay, so I'm going to just do one bundle on here to show you how we start, and then I'll show you the one I've got almost finished. Okay, so here's a piece of pine that's frankly a mess. When you're doing home cut greens, you're going to have this kind of thing. Give it a good shake. Okay, that removed most of those. You don't need all this stuff, okay? So you're going to pull off all that. And your first bundle of greens, you want to be looking for something that has an identifiable point or end, okay? Because you want to be able to layer that over the clip that's before it, so that you'll have a nice full looking wreath. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here where I'm starting, which is straight on in front of me. And you're going to lay your piece of pine. You want something rigid for your first clip, typically, if you can. If you're doing something that's all floppy, then whatever, you know. So lay it down at an angle and try to meet the edge of this cardboard. Okay? So you just hold this down with your left hand. If you're right-handed, or if you're left-handed, it's going to be opposite, of course. So then, on my other one, I was doing the evergreen huckleberry next. You can use anything for this, so you could do all holly, you could do anything. That's totally up to your own creativity. So come here and almost meet the end of this other piece. Okay, still holding it down here. Then I'm going to put a piece of cedar. That's going to hang over a little bit just because cedar is, you know, you can't control cedar. It's kind of has its own mind. It points off of places you don't want it to and everything else. So because this, I'm going to put in some holly here. And then when I get here to the edge, I've got these little pieces I pulled off of that bigger piece of pine. So you're getting kind of shorter as you pinwheel around here, okay? So there. And be very careful in the center because you don't want to lose the hole in the center of your wreath, okay? So when you do this, don't put it like this. Snug it up like this, okay? Okay, so if I was having a piece of color, I would now put that on and kind of point it toward the one we started with. Okay, but I'm not doing color, I'm doing green. So I'm going to put a piece of green holly there instead. That is a pitiful piece of green holly. Let me see.
And of course,
trim that a little.
The amount you're putting on there is dependent on the fluff of the material, or?
Well, yes, okay. Basically, what you're trying to do, when you're doing your first clip, it's very important, and I may even put an extra piece on here because of this. When you do your second bundle of greens, you need to make sure this is going to cover, okay? So that you're going to have a spot to put your next piece right here. And this will be underneath it, so it'll cover. So if you don't do that, then you're going to have a big weird gap there, and it's just not going to look right. So you put a piece of green holly up here, point it toward the one you started with, and then have just some stupid little, to protect this when you put the wire over there, because if this is your decorative piece, you don't want to accidentally cut that off with your wire. Okay, so here's your wire. You've been holding on to this the whole time. Now, when I'm using my machine, I don't have to worry about this because my machine is hanging on to this while I'm doing it. Very carefully put your hand up under the ring so you can get to it. Get a good hold on that before you start wrapping. Normally you would have the paddle, and it's easier because you've got some resistance there. But just make sure you pull this good and tight. Pull it good and tight again. Normally I'm going to do a few wraps. If you feel like you need more, then do more. But you'll blow through some wire doing these if you're doing for gifts or something. Okay, so there's my end of my wire. So here's what it looks like, okay? What do we do with these? Because when you start with your next bundle of greens, that's just like you can't stack that on top of that because then you're gonna be, you know, way up high here. So you have to cut these. Cut at an angle. Start shorter back here, longer down here. And this is why. You're making a channel for that next piece to sit in. So when you do your next piece, and just get rid of these. I normally have a garbage can or a box or something next to me. It ends up everywhere anyway, but whatever. So your next piece now has an angle there where it can sit, and it'll snug right in. See? And because you had this extra piece right here, that lays on top of that, and you can't tell that it went to the next bundle. Okay, so now I'm going to get out the wreath I already started, and we're going to finish that. So I'm going to show you finishing. Finishing is tricky. So I've got three bundles left to do on this one. I chose to do alternating color on this, but really it's really pretty to do color on every bundle. It's just that, you know, I'm simplifying it. Okay, so I'm going to find a piece of pine because that's bushy. I'm going to rip off those bottom couple. Okay, so again, I've got these are called a starter. This is what my boss taught me when I was learning to make wreaths. That's called a starter. So it needs to have at least a little bit of a point here so that you have, see here, this is the point before it. So you're going to lay that in there. Actually, I need a little bit of a... If you have to, then layer it up on top of here, but be a little careful not to cover your color. Okay, so then I'm going to find a piece of evergreen huckleberry. This is a little bit crazy. You can trim some of those off if you want, but be careful when you're trimming because you don't want to end up trimming something you didn't mean to. Okay, so you're going to put that there. This is definitely have to go because it's going to get in the way of my center hole. A piece of cedar. I've got 3 bundles left to do on this. So at that point, you need to start being careful what you're putting on because you're going to have to deal with it when you get to the last. You don't want to be putting on something crazy with a big, thick stick. You don't want to be putting on something that's going to get in your way later. A little piece of holly. And I've got some of these. And again, come to the center here. Don't do this. Do this. And in fact, some people that I used to make Christmas wreaths for would say, can I have a really big hole in the middle? Well, you don't want to try to trim it after because then all your needles are going to look all square and weird. So basically what I would do is I would put it way over here. So, okay, I'm going to... one more piece of holly here. And I need a little tiny piece of pine, which my boss used to call these stars. Just a little anything, just to protect your top decorative piece. Many times I have broken my star and not broken my decorative piece underneath because that was there. And you can always shove another one back in there, but a little harder when you're doing hand wrap to shove it in, but you can. Pull that tight, wrap it again, pull it tight. I'll do one more so I can get back into the center. Okay, so now look here. So now you're going to go to trim your stuff. Be so careful, because if you chop off your first clip, I've done it before. Don't do it. So get that out of the way so you can see. This is why it's a little hairy doing the last few clips, and you need to be very careful with your bundles of greens here that you don't chop off something you didn't mean to. So, okay, move on. As these little lines are a good guide here to try to put this line straight in front of you so that you then have a baseline for where you're going with that. Okay, so I've got another piece of pine. This doesn't have a very good tip, but it's okay because we're, you know, into the wreath a ways and it's not. But see, it does kind of stand out a bit if you do that. Okay, so settle that in there. Get myself a piece of evergreen huckleberry. Okay, that is too crazy. I'm going to have to chop that off. And there's nothing wrong with doing a little bit of trimming after. Just be careful of what you're trimming. Okay. You notice I'm wearing gloves, okay? Don't do this without gloves, even if you're not using holly. Your hands will be so tore up, even from just doing the pine and the cedar, and you'll have this doggone pitch all over you. It will be terrible to try to get off. When I used to do this professionally, everybody had one of those impact mats that you would sit on, or stand on, and that was so that we didn't end up having sore feet. And at the end of the day, there would be a pair of shoes, a print there, and around your pair of shoes was an outline of pitch. Okay, so put that there. Put this one here. Another piece of holly.
Not this piece.
No, that piece is pitiful. Okay, and then I need just one more little star to top it off. Okay, one of the keys, we're running up to the last bundle of greens here, okay? One of the keys that I found when you're doing the last bundle of greens is have something that's a little bit streamlined so that you're going to be able to shove it under the next one. We're stuck. Without it getting stuck. And again, watch where you're at here. Look at this. I was about to tie that down with my other stuff. You don't want that. be very careful here when you're trimming. Not only that you don't cut the first clip, the first bundle, but also that you leave yourself enough room here because you're so close now that you can get in there. Alright, so we're going to go for our last one. I'm typically kind of careful what I pick for my last one. That's broken. We're not using that. This is nice and full, and it's got, so you want it to be like this so that it's covering more area so you're not having to put piece after piece in there and getting it all thick.
It looks like a hand.
Yes. So that's a good piece for your last one, okay? So, okay, lay this in here. But you're going to, this time, because it's the last one, you're going to shove this kind of up underneath the first one so that you're able to hide that. And then I'll show you what we're going to do in a second. Okay, looking for a special piece. That one's pretty good.
Another hand.
Basically, you want to be able to, if you at all can, to put less pieces in your last bundle because it's going to be brutal trying to get everything arranged if it's too fat.
And your bow goes there anyway.
This one,
right?
cedar doesn't. Yes, exactly. Cedar doesn't cooperate, so you're not going to get one that looks like a hand typically. But so I'm going to take the end, shove it up under there. You can pre-cut the end a little bit, so it'll help you. There. Myself a nice piece of holly.
Not this one.
That's exactly right. Okay, there. Okay, so now we can look at what we have left here.
A little hand.
See what we have here? The cover still. This is the first bundle. This is the last bundle. I don't want to see this kind of stuff. So I'm kind of changing my position a bit so I can see what I'm doing. Shove that up under there. See how I've kind of covered that a little bit? And then I'm going to, where's all my stuff? I'm going to have, I need a little bit longer piece maybe.
Some of this is what you learn over time of what looks good on your wreath.
Yes, exactly. I'll put another one. Shove it up another.
Practice makes perfect. Make it for everyone you know.
Being careful, and if you want to test what this is going to look like, you're going to, see that? I had it wrong. You kind of lift your first bundle and kind of try to scooch it over there. So, and then you're trying to determine basically, do you need to put something else there in order for it to look right. There we go. That's going to be better. So now, I'm just going to finish this up.
And that again is where the bow goes.
Oh no, I lost my other two pieces here.
And you poke them back in.